last time we interviewed Tim Richardson, and today we have Luba Grigorovitch.
Yeah.
How do you say?
So Luba Grigorovitch.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself for the audience?
Yeah, so my name is Luba Grigorovitch and I'm currently the member for Cororoy. Cororoy is a wonderful part of Victoria. I cover a lot of different areas from Deer Park, which is in the Brimbank local government area, all the way up to the cusps of Melton, which is in the Melton local government area. I got elected in November last year and I'm very excited that I've just reached my 1 year anniversary.
Yeah. First question we have for you was, how was your high school university life? Do you have any memorable memories?
Yeah, so I went to Mount St Joseph's Girls College in Altona West. It was a great school and I was very fortunate that I had some wonderful teachers there who supported me along the way. Then when I finished high school in Year 12, I was accepted into Victoria University where I studied a double degree, a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Business. And at the same time I worked a few part-time jobs and also played basketball. I found that university was a really good opportunity to meet other like-minded people who wanted to try and succeed in life.
So then my question is, how was it being the State Secretary for the Transport Union?
Yeah, so I was elected as the Victorian State Secretary of the Rail, Tram and Bus Union back in 2014, and it was an absolute honour. It was something that I never dreamt of in my wildest dreams, but something that will always be very dear to me and something I'm very proud of achieving. I worked alongside a wonderful team who genuinely always put our members of the RTBU first. The members of the RTBU are the heart and soul of the earth kind of people. They're just wonderful. And these are our ticket inspectors, these are our station staff at train stations and at tram stops, and they're just wonderful people. And I felt that I was able to represent them, but at the same time learn so much from each and every one of those members. And I still stay in contact with both the executive of the Rail, Tram and Bus Union and the members today.
You said in the speech that wages growth wasn't going particularly well. What's the current WPI?
Google it, mate.
Welcome back to the interview. We just had a little short break, and now we're back here with Luba again. So I have the third question here for Luba. So Luba, you are currently the representative of the electorate of Cororoy, one of the most diverse areas in Australia. What does diversity mean to you, and do you think we should have more people from diverse backgrounds in Parliament?
Yeah, what a great question. Cororoy is incredibly diverse, and as I was saying before, it spans from Deer Park through to the cusp of Melton. I love the fact that we are literally a melting pot of different cultures in the area. I think diversity is incredibly important. I know that today actually marks the fact that we've got 50-50 parity of women in Parliament, which I think is great. But diversity isn't just genders, it's also people and varied ethnicities. So yes, I believe that we should have more people from all different backgrounds in Parliament.
Yeah. I think, do you want to have the next question?
Finally, what made you run in the 2022 state election for the Labour Party?
Yeah, so as we discussed before, I was the State Secretary of the Rail, Tram and Bus Union, which I'd done for close to 10 years, I think it was in the end. I sort of come to the decision that I'd given the union as much as I could, and I looked at what my next step could be, and running and representing people has always been a dream of mine, and especially representing Victorians. There's obviously federal as well, but for me it's always your backyard, and I absolutely love Victoria. I think we've got an amazing state, and I was very fortunate to be pre-selected for the seat of Cororoy and then subsequently win, and I'm very proud to be a Member of Parliament in Victorian government.
Yeah, just quickly as well, because we just saw Jacinta walk by us a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that was, and Ben Carroll as well, so that was a bit of a experience. It was pretty
Absolutely.
pretty nerve-wracking.
Well,
Yeah.
Jacinta's obviously our second female premier. Joan Kerner was our first. Joan was a very dear friend to me and a mentor as well. So it's great that we've got such a powerhouse in a leadership position. Jacinta is absolutely as smart as they come, and she will lead our state really well into the 2026 election and beyond.
Yeah, so because I think I read up about you as well. Didn't Joanne Kerner actually? She was in an MSJ, but that's how you started to get into politics.
That's correct. You're 100% right.
Yeah, so we'll now get on to our second last question. So Luba, you used to be a councillor for the Hobson Bay area, and what are the main differences that you see from being part of the council and being part of State Parliament?
Yeah, great question. So obviously there's 3 tiers of government here in Australia. We've got local government, which I was a councillor, as you said, at Hobsons Bay City Council, so Melbourne's West. State government being Spring Street, here we are, and obviously I'm the state member for Coral, and then there's federal government. All of them look after different portfolios. So when I was on council, probably the biggest issue was residents would call me about footpaths, rubbish and rates. Now that I'm here, it's more state-based, so cost of living, education, health, things that are really important to everyday Victorians.
Yeah, so we'll get now on to the last question. I think George, you have the last question.
So finally, what's one piece of advice you would give to students in 2024, especially those who are entering university or high school?
I think the best piece of advice I can give is don't be afraid. Literally, the sky is your limit, and my mum always taught me that anything is achievable if you put your mind to it. So I know that a lot of you are going through a scary time at the moment. You've just finished year 12. What are your results going to be? Are you going to get into university? It's all going to be okay. If you don't get the results that you're not looking for, there's always another avenue. And we've got that many great jobs here in Australia and that much opportunity that the world literally is your oyster. So whatever you want to do, if you set your mind to it, I have faith that you can do it. It might sometimes take you a bit longer because you've got the marks that you want, but make sure you stick your mind to it. And the other bit of advice is always utilise your networks. Older people know people and can often assist. And similarly, if you reached out to me asking for assistance, I'd be more than happy to help. So make sure you utilise your networks.
Yeah, because as well, the government is investing a lot in TAFE institutions as well. I think we've made TAFE, is it TAFE free now for?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and also first 2 years or first year for teaching at university?
Yeah, I actually think it's the first 2 years.
First 2 years.
So, which is amazing.
Yeah, so that's a lot more pathways for us coming.
Absolutely.
So for many of listeners that want to do teaching or want to go into TAFE, like at least you know first couple of years you'll have free education and,
Yeah, no HECSTER.
and no HECSTER as
Yeah.
well, which is always a great thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wish we had free education everywhere.
Yeah, so those are all our questions for you, Luba. Again, thank you for
You're so
joining
welcome.
today.
Look, lovely to meet you all. And as a fellow person who went to that St Joseph's Girls College, I've got a lot of time for Emmanuel College, and I'm sure great things will come from you guys. So thank you for having me.
Thank you again.
If you want the dole for life, free marijuana, vote Greens. But if you want a lower power, dams, practical solutions, put Australia first, vote United Australia Party.
Welcome back to another episode on the Donkey Rep podcast. Today we have Brownyn Halfpenny. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good.
Would you like to tell the audience a bit about yourself before we start?
So my name's Bronwyn Halfpenny. I'm the state member for the district of Thomastown, which is in the northern suburbs, and I represent people living in Lalor, Thomastown, Epping and Wollert, and of course probably I also do things across that area. We've got the big Northern Hospital there, which is really growing and becoming a real asset for the area. It's sort of growing, there's a lot of specialisation and expertise. We also have the Melbourne markets, which is the sort of wholesale and sort of produce for basically Victoria. And a lot of industrial manufacturing, metal manufacturing, food manufacturing. So it really is a big hub, and particularly with food and metal manufacturing.
The first question we had was, how was your high school and university life, and do you have any memorable moments?
I went to Watsonia High School. It's no longer there. It was pulled down under the Kennett government. And then I moved to Montmorency High School. I probably was one of very few of my friends that did year 12. Where we grew up, I guess, and in that era, education wasn't considered all that important, but of course we know now how very vital and important it is. I was also the first person in my family to ever go to university. I went to Flinders University in South Australia, which was a big adventure, leaving home for the first time and sort of having to do things for myself. I really enjoyed my time there. I did political economy, and that's my interest, politics, the arguing and contesting of ideas, how to make a better society, about justice, rights for working people, and then I moved back to La Trobe where I did a more traditional economics degree. So there wasn't as much opportunity to have all those debates and discussions. But I enjoyed my time there, but I also had more of a focus. I was working to get a bit of an income so I could look after myself, keep myself, because my family were not wealthy. So I probably spent more time out of university than in university in terms of my political activism.
Being there by the bell. Do you actually have any memorable moments though from high school or university that you could talk to us about?
I remember we had some fantastic speakers come in high school. There was a man called Sam Goldwood, and he is passed away, but he was a very big around the peace movement. And even though when I was at school, the peace wasn't really an issue at that time, but I remember him speaking, and what he was saying was just really, I suppose, empowering about talking to students about what they can do as well. They can make a difference, as well as his real sort of deep sense of sort of social justice. So I think of those things. In terms of in terms of high school, I guess it was those other extracurricular sort of things that happened. And at university, I guess I had some really good friends there. We were sort of involved in some of the on-site campus politics. And so I suppose that was sort of also good.
So you were always really interested into getting into politics from a pretty young age?
Politics, not necessarily party politics or members of parliament type politics, but more around politics for social change.
So more towards that social, so you wanted to try and create change, not necessarily joining a party, not necessarily going into parliament or being a member like you are right now. That was not on the plan.
Well, joining the party, yes, but not necessarily that it was going to be sort of come out as being a member of parliament.
I have the second question. So could you talk to us a bit about your experience as the Assistant Secretary of the Australian Manufacturing Workers Union and the Food and Confectionery Division, and how has that transitioned into the industrial containers office?
Okay,
Yeah.
so basically I organised working people in the food industry, and I also ran that part of the union, so sort of from the head office, so whether it was around budgets or staff or the policies that we pursued, the type of agreements we tried to reach with employers, and basically organising working people. So that was a real passion of mine, because it was about giving people a voice, to be able to stand up and articulate what it is that they believe they need or they want, and then being able to do something about achieving that, but in an empowering way. So it was those working people that were doing it. It wasn't about people doing things to them, but it was about them being part of their own destiny, or all of us want to be part of our own destiny. So I used to travel all over the state for that, and you really did learn a lot of skills that are really well placed for political life, and being a member of parliament, running campaigns. After that, my work with the AMWU, I then went to the campaigns officer at Trades Hall, and that was a position where you're working not with individual working people, but with unions that represent working people in different occupations. And I remember in that I sort of think about, we did a really big piece around climate change, and so that was around the sort of 2008s or 9s, and I look at how aware people are today compared to then, and it's completely different. Yeah, I mean, but in saying that, union representatives were very much aware of it, very much in favour, but I guess that it wasn't talked about much.
Yeah, not to the extent as it is right now.
Yeah.
Like people like Greta Thunberg pushing it really hard.
Yep.
But back in those 2008, 2009 times, especially climate change was an issue, I think, but it wasn't really as publicised and talked about as much as it is right now.
No, that's right. Yeah. And it's good campaigning by lots of different people across the world that has really increased the focus.
Yeah.
And the need. I mean, we're in a critical position.
Exactly, because the decisions we make now are going to affect us in the next 50, 60 years. And
Yep.
for us young people as well, me, Tobias and Ryan as well, like the decisions politicians make right now are going to affect how we live in the future. So, and that's why I do like a lot of the young activists, even though some of them might be a bit disruptive sometimes, I guess. Maybe we could talk about Parliament last week of how they came in during question time. But what they push sometimes, it's really important change that we need in the community, because we might not even have a world in the next 50, 60 years that we can live in. Like, the climate is really, really important. It is changing rapidly.
And I have to say, I don't think change really ever happens by people being too polite.
Yeah.
You look at even around South Africa and apartheid. You look at some of the tactics used then, and I'm pretty sure us older generations, we said, oh, they shouldn't have done that, but they did it and it worked, and no one got hurt, but it didn't. But it certainly probably caused a bit of disruption. Yeah, and I say often to people, I really worry, what sort of world are we leaving for our children? There's sort of war throughout the world. There's terrible injustice, and there's also climate change and the heating of the earth and what that does for even if it's bushfires and floods or extinction of important animals and parts of our ecosystem.
Even with the wars right now in Ukraine and in Gaza as well, it really does make you think about how lucky you are to be in Australia.
Yes,
well.
yep,
It really is, especially with because we just came from question time to listen to Alan and David Southwick give their real testimonies about what happened yesterday as well.
Yep.
At Crown, I believe. Yeah, that was it really does make you feel lucky about living in Australia.
Yes.
All right. We'll now move on to the third question.
Yeah. So you've served on many public committees in your time in Parliament. Could you briefly talk about your work on these committees?
Actually, well, Tobias, the parliamentary committee work that I've done in the past has been really sort of rewarding, and I hope that it's also made a difference, and that those people that participated, that gave submissions, spoke to us, feel that what they were doing was worthwhile. Sometimes there's organisations or governments, they do a lot of consultations and asking for feedback, and then people feel a bit disappointed that it hasn't actually resulted in anything. But with the parliamentary committees that are on, some of the, I suppose, higher profile ones were the child abuse inquiry into non-government organisations, and the other one was the inquiry into the fiscal country fire authority training ground, which was contaminated with chemicals. The CFA management at the time knew about it, and they were putting at risk all those volunteer firefighters. It was quite horrible. And again, this is a case where a lot of people were sceptical, and it's about chemicals and whether they cause cancer. We look at vaping, for example. This idea, you don't know straight away what new chemicals or new things do to your body. But normally we find out far too long later, even though people are raising the problem, that in fact they are bad for you. They cause cancers, they cause other problems, and that was the fiscal inquiry.
Yeah, that point towards vaping as well, the federal government, I believe, has moved towards banning all vapes in Australia. So
or I think the imported vapes, which I'm assuming, I don't know if there's any locally manufactured vapes.
I wouldn't think so. Yes, I think it is a big issue as well, because a lot of people within our school, I think Tobias as well can speak a bit more on it as well.
A young age, people, even in our school, they do it.
It's a pretty big
They
issue.
can rule against it, so society,
All the time, energy, money being spent on getting rid of tobacco and smoking, and it's coming back again
with
in a new way, And I also was listening what they were talking about. It was on the radio today actually. How companies find loopholes, no matter what sort of laws governments bring in, they always find a loophole, and one of them is with the vaping.
Yeah, because our school has moved towards. I know I think have they introduced they put in smoke detectors within
They've had cameras
in the bathrooms as well. So
they've had smoke
so a lot of the senior teachers, I believe, they'll get notified if someone's vaping in the toilets, and they'll go over there. But it's still and it still doesn't stop them though, because there's a lot of it's really surprising. You'll even say year 8s and year 7s.
Okay.
Really young kids, like 13, 14-year-olds, and they're all vaping as well at such a young age. It's it is really scary to see that.
Yes. Now, can I ask though, cameras in the toilets? That sounds. What do you think about the privacy issue?
It's a bit.
I don't think it.
This is just a question, like just a debate.
I think it's more smoke detectors. It's not really
okay.
cameras. There's cameras outside the toilet. Just to make sure who's going in and out. But I don't think there's cameras inside. That is a pretty big breach of privacy in our school.
But as I just asked the question because I don't know what you think.
That's what we've been told.
That's what, and we've seen it as well. Okay. So I now have the fourth question. So, who would you say is your political role model / idol?
Oh, that's
It's too many to pick.
And I just saw that question. Well, how am I going to answer that one? If I look in a real personal way, I would probably say my grandmother and her sister, and probably my mother, my father. But because I guess my family has been political for quite a few generations.
Pretty much in the Labour Party as well, or?
No, not so much in the Labour Party. My grandmother was in the Labour Party. I remember as a young girl staying at her place, and we'd go up to Brian Howe. He was the member for her area. She was in West Heidelberg, and we'd be putting letters in envelopes and doing all those sort of things. So she was in the Labour Party, and she was also an activist in the women's movement, the Union of Australian Women. Always in some sort of a party or political party. My dad, he was sort of a leader in the trade union movement. My mother was also politically active. Not as members of parliament, but
within the union space. Because that's an interesting point you raised. Because I myself actually have a little bit of political history. So my great grandfather was the chief campaign officer back in the day for former Labour Premier Edmund Hogan.
Wow, okay.
My great grandfather, they were pretty good mates. So my grandfather, when he was a young boy, he used to see Edmund Hogan come to, because they lived on a farm around outside the Ballarat region, so Mount Edmund, so it's close to Gordon and Deland.
Yes.
In that area. So I think probably in the Eureka orchard.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, in that area. So so my great grandfather nearly ran for parliament actually. After the Great Depression, because Edmund Hogan, I think he left to join the Country Party, or I think he got kicked out because of the Premier's plan, something along those lines in the 1930s.
Okay.
So they. It was it was the 1930s because they wanted my great grandfather to run against him, but my great grandfather couldn't do it because he couldn't run against his best mate in politics.
Okay.
So.
That's a very nice attribute to be loyal to your friends.
Even if he's in a different political party. So.
That's right.
Even after that though, my grandfather got into Labour politics, so he was he actually became pretty big. He met a lot of the former leaders, so Arthur Calwell, Ben Chifley, and that sort of time in 40s.
What was his name?
He was the same name as me, Francis Lillis, as well.
Francis Lillis.
Yeah, he's the same name.
Okay, I'll have to look up, see what I can find. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so I remember one of my dad's actual memories when he was growing up was when he was a little boy. They went to church at St. Francis in Lonsdale Street.
Yes.
And Arthur Calwell used to go to church there. So also with my grandfather, he left the Labour Party in 55 because of the DLP split.
Yes. Yep. So he went to the DLP?
Yeah, afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah. So after, I think this is in the 60s because my dad's born in 56, so he was like a little kid. And he remembers meeting Arthur Calwell at church. And Arthur Calwell went up to my grandfather and said, very famous, he was like, "Why did you leave us, Frank? Why did you leave the Labour Party?" Because he knew at that point, even though I don't think they were in contact much, I think he had an inkling that my grandfather would have left because a lot of my grandfather was probably very much on the Labour right side of politics. So because back in those days, I think the Labour Party was very much Irish Catholic and that sort of thing.
Yes.
Which is what my family is. So that's how they got into the Labour movement. So yeah, I have a little connection.
But also quite a strong social justice.
Yeah,
like
very
the
strong.
Church has
Yeah.
quite a bit of a
Yeah, so
like
like
that Jesuits and
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. My grandparents were very much for Indigenous recognition. So
Yep.
like they were good friends with one of I forgot his name actually, one of the famous Indigenous singers. But yeah, my grandparents were very much into social justice because my grandma, who my grandfather married, she didn't come from much money. Like her mum was only a janitor at a local hospital in the city, so she grew up in East Melbourne. So
Now you should never say only. That's an important job
Yeah.
too.
yeah,
Be proud.
yeah, I'm very proud. So she came up from a long way. Like even her, because her father left the family when she was only a little girl. So to move up to where she was, like to own a house because they lived in Dandenong. I know this is turning more into like more of my own podcast.
That's good. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so yeah, but to move up to where she to owning a house in Dandenong and having a family from where she was before, like with only having her mum and her two sisters when her father left, it's a really something to be proud of. Like it shows a lot of it shows the Australian way where
Yeah, you can.
you
You're
can-
not stuck in a class or a
yeah.
particular way that you can't
Yeah.
because of That's,
And even my
that's-
grandparents as well, they didn't have a lot of education. So like my dad was my dad's sisters and him were the first ones in the family to ever go to university because my grandpa only did I think year 8. My grandma I think barely finished primary school. So
Okay.
yeah, it really shows you can go through adversity and keep pushing forward.
Yes, and often, well, not formal education, self-taught.
Yeah.
So many, especially of that age, that you sort of get amazed at the amount of books people have read and special interests that they've been involved in, and it's all. I mean, my father, he was an apprentice. He left school about 14 or something. Came from Donald in northern Victoria to live in Melbourne to do his apprenticeship. But he read a lot. He could sort of debate and discuss, with the highest sort of. In fact, he had a lot of friends that were, academics basically, and What about your family?
I have no political thing.
Okay, but I
only
bet they were
with-
involved. Even politics
only-
is even some local thing, trying to do a petition to
Oh,
get a
you-
park or
I mean,
whatever.
your cousin.
Yeah,
your
my
cousin-
my cousin ran in the last in the 20 I think it was
2022
Yeah,
federal
yeah.
election.
Yeah,
Okay.
she ran for I think it was health I think.
The health party.
Yeah.
It's an anti-vax
Yeah,
party.
it was in
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
one of the,
Yeah.
but
Okay,
it's still good to be politically
Yeah,
I-
getting in.
I
Exactly.
didn't actually know much about it, but she did offer some other people what's called child law, but I didn't know about it back then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So not much.
So at least you have something.
Yeah.
And there's probably much more because I think if there's an issue, most people, because I think we do hand it down a little bit from our our families.
Yeah.
Just to be alert about the world, look to make it a bit different, make it a contribution.
I mean, you don't have to come from a political family to run in parliament. You don't have
Yeah,
to come
no,
from
that's
that,
right.
Not at all.
Exactly.
I mean, it does help a little bit. Like I think there will be some people here today in parliament that have like grandparents or parents who were in parliament before them. But it's not necessarily a necessity. You don't have to
No.
even if your family doesn't know anything about politics, if you just learn yourself, discover your own political views, you can become.
And I know that there is, for example, Labor members Labor members of Parliament who are also, their parents may be Liberal voters. So there's all that sort of
And
stuff.
even vice versa, there might be
Yes.
some Liberal members whose parents voted Labor.
That's right. Yeah. Probably not many on either side, but a few. There's always someone out of the box.
Out of the box, yeah. All right, we'll get down to the second last question. So, what made you specifically run in the 2010 election and for the Labor Party?
Well, I've been a member of the Labor Party for like 20 years or more. And I sort of originally joined because even though maybe not all of it's, when you look at governments, that's often a little bit different to what the party believes, because I guess the government has to be practical, whereas the party and the people that are members of it are more probably aspirational in how they sort of see things. And I think you can have a mix of both and you can do both things. it's always a little bit harder. So I don't think they would necessarily have to be separate. So I got in. So that's how I got involved. And a party that can sort of organise, and you've got other people like-minded to work with you. And so from that, I was actually asked by my union if I would run in the election because they wanted to have sort of more representation in the parliament for sort of working people. Yeah.
So did you run previously before 2010? Or
No,
was that the first time?
that was the first time. And you nominate, and you have to get pre-selection so that your party has to, decide you're the person for
Within
that
a certain
seat.
branch as well.
Yes, and then you have to run for the actual election.
Yeah, because that's pretty interesting. Because many of the other politicians we've talked to, some of them, they've run multiple times to even go for pre-selection. They weren't pre-selected, and they've had to wait, 10, 15 years to get pre-selected. But for you, Bronwyn, like running straight away and getting it, pretty lucky, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. And I was sort of older, and I guess I suppose it wasn't that wasn't my aspiration, to be honest. When I was asked, I sort of jumped at the chance and said yes, I'd like to be able to maybe put a bit of a different view, or raise some other things, or be part of a reformist government, which I think we were lucky to have Daniel Andrews for that, because he definitely was very much a reformist government. And Jacinta Allen now too.
Okay. So we'll move on now to our final question.
Finally, what is one piece of advice would give to students in 2024, especially those who are entering university and high school?
I guess work hard and don't be distracted, but of course
cliche.
enjoy yourselves as well. Yeah, that's right. Isn't it a cliche? But also, I guess, make sure you question things and inquire, because even of your teachers, even what is the curriculum. Even maybe you can even put up some ideas about the sort of things you'd like to see as extras in terms of if somebody comes in to speak to you about something. Try to be really engaged in that way. And I would also say you should, particularly in high school, make contact with your local member of parliament, because you really can make a difference and change things and have an influence. And as I said before, one of the things that I really like to do and want to do is to make sure that people have a voice and their concerns and issues and all that are listened to. And out of that, you can often, you really can make a change. Just one conversation with a member of parliament about an issue or a minister can actually, you might not know, but sometime later when something comes up, it's like, that point that was raised, it all can, it all makes a difference.
Yeah, even from the sidelines, even if you're not in Parliament, you can still make a huge change towards policy in Australia.
Yep.
Even in Victoria specifically. Like, we've been in contact with Matthew Hilakari, who's our local member, for the past year or so. So yeah, we had we had a speech this year for Year 12, which was on an issue in society, and I did the Voice to Parliament. So I emailed Matt to ask for his own opinion on the Voice to Parliament, so I could include it in my speech as a reference and like a little quotation from a politician. So yeah, he did get back to me, which is really good. So most parliamentarians, they're actually, for many people, some young people might not realise this, but politicians are really just there to serve you as people. So their whole job is to talk to you guys and listen to your issues.
Yeah, they're here to help you.
And they're not. Some people think they're here for their own political gain. That's not actually their whole role at all.
And even if it was, if you're not coming and speaking, then you can't make the change. It doesn't even have to be that you agree with that politician, but they, in the end, you vote them in. So if you're not happy with something, or you think something's different, you should also put that up. Because one of the problems, and I think every member of parliament would struggle with this, it is really hard to get involve younger people, and that's probably because we're doing it the wrong way. I even know, for example, in Thomastown, we do a lot of lobbying and advocacy for a youth hub, And so the state government, we've given some funds to do what's called a study, a feasibility study. Where should it be? What should it look like? What type of building should it be? What programs? And it's been really hard to get a good mix of young people to talk to us about all these things. And again, I think that's our fault that we don't know how to do it, but maybe it'd be good if you could, and when I said not you two individually, three, but overall, start telling us how it is that we can engage with you. How do we get you to talk to us about things, put your opinion, and that sort of thing.
Because it's always important, like in politics as well. Like even if you're not in parliament, your voice still can be heard via your politicians, via your local members. So if you have any concerns or anything that you want changed, like bring it up with the local politician.
Or even what you need in the area, like state governments are often about infrastructure, councils are about basketball courts and recreational things, but your local member can still, help you put together a campaign, start lobbying for those sort of things.
All right then. I think that's all our questions. I'd like to thank you again, Bronwyn, for joining us. We realise we're taking you out of a pretty busy day of Parliament, the last day of Parliament. So thank you for saving at least 30 minutes or so for us to have a chat and discuss these important questions.
Well, thank you, and thanks for organising, and it's really great to do this, and hopefully it's worthwhile for you, all of you too.
Yeah.